Welcome to lesson 2 on creating a sports betting model. If you haven't watched lesson 1, go check that out. If not, stay tuned. We're going to get started right now. Welcome to The Advantage. I'm A-Train Bets, and I use my brain to make bets. In this video, we're going to get into our second lesson on creating a sports betting model. And what we're going to do here is help give you some ideas on what to do first when you're ready to set out and actually start writing something. So the first video, we talked a lot about strategy. We talked a lot about understanding what you're trying to accomplish, forming a plan, doing all of the kind of basic getting ready work, which is super important. So again, if you haven't watched that video, go watch that video first and watch it 10 times. We're not going to complain. All right. So we're going to talk about actually moving your model forward now. And what we want to do is, the important thing to note is that you have so much you want to do right now. It's so overwhelming. And believe me, I've built my model. I understand, because I always made a joke. The data industry jokes only get so good, but I used to make a joke in the data industry. And I would always say, when you're doing data governance, or you're doing a data project, or you're building some technology or whatever, you turn over these stones, right? You turn over the stones and see what's underneath it. And every single time you turn over a stone in data, it's worse than you had expected. It's worse than you had imagined. It's worse than you thought it could be. And also there's 100 more stones. And so it's kind of this never ending process of realizing, oh man, that's a lot of work. Oh man, that stinks. Oh man, that's more complicated than I thought it would be. It's what you're signing up for if you're building a sports betting model, because nobody's here to give out their money. You have to beat them. You have to beat these multi-billion-dollar books at their own game and all the other people betting to some extent or another to be successful in sports betting. That's what you're signing up for. So be aware, there's a lot to this, and it's going to get hairy. Be ready for that. Okay. That said, ironically, the first thing I want to talk about today is that the fewer people that are involved in you building your model, the faster you're going to go. And that sounds backwards, right? You would think, well, if I had a bigger team, I'd get more done. You would, but you'd have a lot more inefficiencies as well. And this comes from the 25 years I've spent in real world technology development. And that is, the more people you have working on something, granted, you have more horsepower, but you need a whole lot more coordination to make sure that everybody's aligned in that same direction. You're talking meetings, you're talking documents, and that takes work, that takes time. You are going to move slower. You may be bigger, you may be, doing more. You may be the cruise ship versus the speedboat, but you will move slower, especially at the start. You may need to, because of things we talked about in that first video around skills, around available time and energy and other resources. You may have to cobble together a team. I'm building my model mostly alone with a little bit of help from a business partner, right? That's gives me a huge advantage because I can do a lot of the things myself, and I can internalize a lot of stuff I'd otherwise in the corporate world need documents or meetings for. So keep that in mind. The fewer people involved, the faster you can go. That said, the thing I want you to think about is, and there's a term in the technology development world called MVP, which stands for minimum viable product. And I want you to think about that. You don't need to use the MVP term, although it's kind of fun in sports betting. But the concept behind it is that I want you to think about going and creating the dirt path first. So think about it moving physically, and you're trying to get somewhere, you're trying to find a place you want to camp in the forest, right? You don't want to pave a multi-lane highway while you're exploring, while you're like, I think it might be good over here by the river. And then you realize there's a shitload of snakes over there. You don't want to be there, right? You don't know that till you go check it out. And so that's the mentality I want you to have with the model is think dirt path first. Go check it out, get something minimal going in that direction and prove out, does this thing have legs? Am I wasting my time? Is this a good path to follow? And do I want to invest in creating more repeatability? Do I want to invest in creating faster and more complete automations? That all takes work. Is your time and money, other resources going to be invested appropriately if you continue down this path? You want to test that hypothesis as quickly and easily as you can. So when you can get that, that is the first step. So think minimum viable product, think dirt path first. Okay. when you do that and you start to move and you start to actually write some code or build your spreadsheet or do whatever tech, and we're not going to talk about specific tech in this, but I want to do, you can answer those. There's variables here we're going to talk about. You can plug in the values for those variables, whatever you want them to be. I'm not going to tell you what technology to use. It's a different situation than what I have. I have certain skills. I don't have other skills. I found a solution that works for me. That's not the solution that's going to work for you. Okay. So I can't answer that question, but I can help you ask and then answer that question yourself. Okay, so focus. You got this idea of a dirt path. Focus on saying, what do I have to do to get something output and actually theoretically be able to bet with it? It'd be terrible. Don't worry about making something good. Just make something. Start by something. It's going to be hard to make something good, but you got to start by making something, because if you can focus on this completing the cycle, let's think about it, complete the cycle all the way around, and then you can start to spin it faster. Okay. Another way to think about it, a bad model can be iterated into a good model. You can learn from a bad model. You can enhance a bad model, and at some point it becomes a good model, right? If you have no model, if you have no process, if you have no output, you can't iterate that. You have nothing. You have nothing to spin. You have nothing to iterate. So no model is nothing. At best, you have some potential value. This is something in the software development. If you're not shipping code, if you're not bringing features to customers, you're creating no real value. You can create all the potential value. You know what potential value doesn't pay? The bills. It doesn't pay the bills. And so you need to create real value. The only way you do that is by completing that cycle and actually outputting something that creates a change in behavior, a bet in our case, right? So got to understand, you got to finish that process, start to create something that can be iterated, and then also think about how you will measure your goodness of that model, right? How will your model, whether it's good or bad, how will that goodness be measured? Because you probably, maybe you do, but you probably don't want to just go blindly bet something and you're like, oh, I know how that thing got made. That's not going to work well. You don't want to get the answer by saying, well, I lost all that money. Like, that's not a good way to do it. You got to think about, how can I assess whether this model's good or not? You want to paper trade it? That's an option. You want to test with different metrics? You can do that. You can back test and do that. You can come up with a whole bunch of ways you can do that. We can have videos on some of that stuff. We'll talk about back testing and all that. But the fact is you need to know whether your model's good or not. And you really should know that before you make an actual bet. You should know that. Okay. So think about that. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of extra shameless self-promotion in this video, because this is the goddamn answer key. And it's my book, Data Leadership for Everyone, available at Amazon and other bookstores everywhere. I had a real publisher for this. This is like an actual legitimate book. I know. If you ever want to, spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours and make tens of cents per hour, write a book. It's great. But in the world I came from, I needed to have the book to put these ideas out into the world. It was something I had to say. So I'm proud of what the book is, even though I literally will never make another dollar from it. The $5s of dollars I made from it were great, but I'm proud of it because of what it says is what you need. If you're watching this video, you should read the thing. And here's an audiobook too. I didn't even do the audio. They wouldn't let me. I wanted to, they wouldn't let me. The Data Leadership for Everyone, How You Can Harness the True Power of Data at Work is the full title. But you can look that up. If I can remember, I'll put a link in the video notes on this one. So that you can find a link to it, but you can get it at Amazon anywhere else. But in that, I outline a process for data leadership, because the whole thesis statement of data leadership is about data value, and the way you get data value is by improving business processes in a measurable way. And that measurable way is dollars. That's how you make money. Like, this is what data should do, is drive improvements. In a sports betting model context, same stuff, right? So the key steps to this, these are a little bit higher level than we're going to get into in a moment in this video, but I want to talk about them because I think they're very generic in a good way. Like, they're universally applicable, or generic, right? The steps in data leadership, the data leadership framework, if you will: access, refine, use, impact, and govern. I'll talk about them briefly in what I actually have videos on data leadership already, so you can watch those if you're interested in this too. I won't go into great detail on this because I want to talk about it specifically to sports betting. But access, preparing for use, preparing for the use of data, gathering the data, getting the data in a place you can work with it. Okay. Refine is about saying, okay, we've got some data. Let's put this together in a way that we can start to drive improvements in behavior, in activities and decisions. That's building potential. You haven't gotten to the actual decisions and activities yet, but you've got to take some steps to make that data into a form that you're going to be able to drive these things from. In our case, it's going to be driving good bets from, right? So you refine that data. You refine what's going on. You use it to create the product that you're ultimately going to drive business outcomes with. Okay. Use. There you go. Deliver the insights. Put the data into the product or the hands of the people who are going to create the dollars. That's what you need to do. How do you drive decisions and activities with the data? Again, the applicability here in sports betting, it's so obvious, right? You have to understand and use that data to form better bets. That's what you're doing. When you use that data, that's exactly what you need to be doing. Okay. Then the impact stage is saying not just executing the bet, putting the bets in, but understanding where those improvements actually happen. How can I learn from this data? How can I use this data on an ongoing operational process? Because in business, you don't just do things once a lot of the time. You're doing things in an operational context. It repeats itself over and over again, whether you're creating widgets in a factory or you're developing software or you're doing customer service. These things happen over and over again. And so that impact stage is leveraging that data in an ongoing capacity to drive valuable things. Right? Very simple. The applicability, again, for sports gambling, very, very clear. Okay. Finally, govern. Now, I came from a world where we did a lot of data governance. We're doing a lot of things to help businesses operate with data more efficiently. And the key to governance is scaling the results. Sometimes, if you want to jump higher, right? Say you want to jump higher, you can do a lot of different things. You can do squats. You can get bouncier shoes. You can lose 50 pounds, right? Losing 50 pounds is not the reason to do, the jumping higher comes from doing something entirely different, which means not eating all the goddamn cookies and pizza, right? So, but you have to understand they're very intertwined. They're just wildly different things. Jumping up and down is a wildly different thing than not eating pizza. But that's how you solve the other problem. Governing is also realizing sometimes you got to do something way over here to get an impact over here. And those are the things that you want to be thinking about. If you're signing up for building a model, you are creating a technology platform. You are creating, operational processes. This is building a business, right? You are building a business. If you're building a model, you're building a business, even if it's a business of one for sports betting. That's what building a model is about. Okay. So, by the way, if you'd like a great keynote for your company, I clean up nice. I'll wear a jacket, the whole thing, right? Collared shirt, everything, right? So if you need a great keynote for a company, it's good keynote. I do pretty well when it comes to keynote speakers in the data space that tell a lot of jokes. It's a small group, but I do that. I enjoy it. So if you need a keynote, I'll still do those. It's not core to my business anymore, but I like doing that, and it'd be fun. So if you want to talk about this, read the book or whatever, reach out, certainly. Anyway, let's get into how that applies in the sports gambling sense, in the sports betting model space, right? The key technology pieces you're going to want to have answers for, right? Remember, technology is a tool, like a collection of tools. Right? Collection of tools are the technologies you're going to use. You can use a lot of different tools. You can build a chair in a workshop with a bunch of different tools, right? A lot of them are interchangeable, right? What kind of saw do you have? What kind of screwdrivers you got, or socket set, or wrenches, whatever, right? I honestly literally don't know anything about building chairs. Chisel? You need a chisel for that shit? Probably. All right. So the key I also won't swear as much. Can't promise won't slip out in a keynote. So you guys got to be kind of cool, but I'll do my best. Anyway, so the tech pieces in building the model, gathering data, right? You got to find some data, get it. You want to buy it? You want to scrape it? Do it? You want to invent it? Sometimes that's not a good idea, but you got to get some data. You're going to need data to do a model, right? Figure that out. How are you going to get it? What tools are you going to use? Where are you going to put it? Right? How are you going to process it? Right? This is where we're starting to move into that refinement step. Right? Gather data as access, process data as refining. How are you going to process that and start to form? Here's what we start to think about. What are you trying to do with the data? There's a couple things. First, you want to create projections. What is a perspective of truth in whatever area you've chosen to specialize in? Again, go back to the first video. But in wherever you've decided to specialize in, sport, markets, whatever, you want to create some projections, and don't worry about bets yet. Don't worry about that. What you want is a perspective of truth that gives you some sort of unique understanding that will ultimately drive better bets. But it's a multi-step process, right? When you're gathering data, you're not getting edge there. You're just getting data, right? You process it, you start to form projections that now start to represent some truth. And that truth, just like when we look at top-down betting, we use the different odds from different bookmakers. We're trying to suss out what the truth is from them. Here, you're taking a totally different approach to find truth that you're like, this was made to find truth. There's a lot of value in that if you can do it well, right? So that's how, again, you don't have to do it well the first time. Just do something. Create a projection of something. You want to do home run projections. That's your model. Home run projections. Go for it, right? Create some projections and then look at it and say, well, we're going to need to improve that. That's going to be the answer. So fine, but create something. Again, that dirt path. Okay, next. Then you have projections. Now we're going to need to start to create predictions. So projections and predictions. I could have picked better terms, but I didn't. What I mean by predictions is you want to start to understand potential edges, where you're going to find edges in the markets when you are actually going to place bets, because you could have a bunch of truthful insights and the market's like, yep, we get that. That's fine. You're not going to have anywhere to play, right? So the prediction side is where you're starting to say, okay, I start to have a perspective of truth. Now I need a perspective on where am I going to find a way to beat the books? And that's where you need to start to investigate where might there be known issues. I mean, start with some of the things that are kind of bread and butter sharp sports betting, right? We know what the public does. They love to bet the overs. They love to bet the favorites. They like to bet a little to win a lot. There's certain dynamics here that are very obvious, very well known. Start there and say, okay, how can I refine this in some way with the sources of truth I've now created to then provide something where I might start to get edges in the bets that I'll end up making, right? So keep in mind, what's beautiful about building a model is that it's very clear what you're trying to do. You are trying to give yourself insights into sports bets. And if you do it well, your sports bets will win you money. It's a very pure process. This is why I've loved going from data consulting into actual sports betting. It's because there's no clearer way to know whether or not you're using data well than to make a sports bet and win or lose over time. I mean, there's a lot of variance, but you need to be winning, right? And so that, I mean, that the best evidence that I have of my models winning is that I'm I have an ROI projection here, and a lot of the time I'm dead in alignment with that ROI. That's really nice because it's a high ROI. Those are things that you want to be finding. Right. So just understand when you look and start to create projections, it's about forming hypothesis. I have an idea. I'm curious about this. I think this might be a thread to pull on. Again, dirt path over to that motherfucker and say, I didn't really need to say motherfucker there, but it was fun. And I said it again. Holy cow, it's a whole slew of motherfuckers around here. All right. But the fact is, I'm leaving that in too. I don't care. But you want to say, I'm going to go and check these things out. I'm going to try something. Because if you're willing to try it, especially something that's tricky, especially something that's not easy to do, think about your competitors. How many people are putting in the effort? How many people are putting in the time? How many people are going down that path? You want to find the path that not everybody's going down. If it's easy, if it's obvious, we've talked about that so many times, right? So you go and you start forming these predictions, the hypothesis on these edges. Okay. The next step is where you actually start to take those predictions and start to say, okay, how do I think this is actually fitting into the market? This is where you compare to what's actually happening in the market. This is where A-Train Station can come in. This is why we created this custom line upload feature, is that once you've created your predictions, I think the White Sox have a 22% chance of winning today, which is about their right average because they're terrible. I'm theoretically a White Sox fan, but I'm not happy about it. But 22%. Well, you've created a win percentage. At the right price, you're betting the White Sox, you swallow and pinching your nose and bet the White Sox, or you're betting their opponent at the right price. You don't know what that price is going to be. That's what the prediction is. The prediction is the win percentages on that. The bet comes from what is the market going to give me, right? So if I'm going to go and take these lines, upload them into A-Train Station brings on all that market information and says, based on your model, now you should play this or not. And that's when you say, okay, now I need a betting strategy associated with whatever I'm doing with my model. And you may incorporate other sharp books or whatever you want to do. But you need to compare to the market to find the opportunities. And I think this is really important because a lot of people, when they think model, they jump straight to betting. Well, the model actually has 3 different key steps, right? The projections, what do we think is going to happen? The predictions, where do we think we might find edge? And how do we start to target those areas? And then comparing to the market, which is where we actually do the betting. Well, that's not even where we do the betting. That's where we find the bets we're going to make. Then you go make the bets, right? So you find the bets in the station, then you go to the books and bet those there, right? So you do that. Okay. And whether or not you actually make the bets, probably not at first, but when you start to say, okay, would have made this bet, how'd it go? What you need to do is you need to measure your accuracy. You need to measure how did your model help support what you were trying to do? How did it fit into the market? How did it do, in all of these different steps? So you need to measure how accurate is your model? Where does it hold up? Where is it not holding up? How might you improve on that? So that's the next step. Identify opportunities for improvement. Say, okay, we made our dirt path. What needs to improve? What needs to get better? Do I need more data? Do I need to do something new with that data? Do I need to take that data and form it in a different way so I can start to address a different market that I think there might be edge in? Okay. Those are things that you have to think about. This is such a beautiful problem solving exercise, right? You're creating your own game of chess a lot of the time. This is why I struggle a lot of the time with questions that people ask me like, well, how do I build the model? Well, the model's there to answer the question. You have to ask questions. And the way you build the model, like I have 25 years of building data warehouses. I do some dumb different stuff that most people are not going to find easily approachable. But then I get bogged down on some of the deep analytics and statistical stuff. My math skills aren't that good, right? And so I have to understand my own strengths and weaknesses. I do things my way. You have to answer that for yourself. And if you try to get somebody else to short circuit that, not going to go well. It's not going to go well because they can't answer that because they don't know your skills. They don't know that, And so this is why I can only get so far in some of these lessons is I don't have all the answers. I can't give you the answers. I can give you the variables that you need to plug in for. Okay. So you're going to measure accuracy. You're going to identify improvement opportunities, and then you're going to improve. You're going to loop. You're going to iterate. Remember, see how important that was to create that bad model out of the gate so that you have an opportunity to measure it and improve it. How do you know what to change if you don't know what's not good? And how do you know what's not good if you haven't come up with a way to figure out what's not good? Right? These are the things that create a model. And the more you can iterate, the faster you can iterate, the better it improves. At some point, you might do what I do and create an automation to iterate automatically. Right? I run a tuning engine, AI tuning engine that I wrote 24 hours a day. I got the Apple Care on that laptop now. I realize I'm writing way too many things to this SSD. I need to make sure this thing's protected. Anyway, so a lot of different technologies can solve these challenges. We talked a little bit about this before. Just like many tools in a workshop can help you build something, build a chair, build a desk, whatever. And you have to decide, what am I building in my workshop? What am I building in my model workshop? What tools do I need at my disposal when I go down this path? Right? How do I build a crappy chair, learn from and build a nice chair? Right? And that's really where you want to be. The days, if they're even existent today, the days in purebred top-down betting are limited. They are going to go away because it's too easy, it's too accessible, it's too obvious, and the books are all over it. You're going to get limited, you're going to burn your accounts. I've burned most of my accounts, but I can still go and play things in my model because they don't look as sharp as other things because they're a different perspective on truth. This is how markets start to get more efficient. Right? But if you want to play in the world of exchanges, you want to play in the world of sharp betting in 2027, you want to still be a sharp sports bettor in 2027, you're going to need a new bag of tricks. And creating models is going to be that. Right? This is what sharp sports bettors have been doing for a long time. All right. But going back to the tools, some of these tools that you're going to use are interchangeable, and they can all help you. Now, I want to be very careful and clear on something that AI is not going to answer these questions for you either. AI is not precise on this stuff. And if you use AI enough, and I've been using Grok a lot, I've been using AI, and AI can be very helpful to get you moving in a direction, but a lot of times that answer is up to you. A lot of times it misinterprets. It's very human in a lot of ways. AI is very human in some of the things that it does. It asserts too much confidence. It sends you on wild goose chases. You ask that random person for directions on the street, and they send you completely the wrong way. Sometimes they do it just to fuck with you. Not saying I would do that, but just saying, be careful who you're asking directions from. And AI doesn't necessarily understand the complexities and the nuance of some of these things. It can be very helpful, but it is not going to give you the answers. And again, if it gives you answers and it's super easy and it's super obvious and so many other people are going to do it, where's your edge going to be? Sometimes the hard work earns the results. Okay. But AI will help in the journey. And it is a journey, again, a lot like starting a business, right? It won't be immediately successful, and you probably won't be successful doing it casually unless you pick a very targeted spot. You pick a very specific edge, a very specific market that you want to try to exploit, and you keep that small, and then you can do it casually. Or if you have partners or whatever, like there's ways to do it, but you have to understand that's maybe part of your limitation. You only have an hour a day, an hour a week to work on these things. You have to think about, how can I scale my ambition and my planning to what resources I have available, and time is one of those, right? So time, attention, commitment, any of those. Be honest with it, because the model isn't going to let you BS yourself, right? Sports betting is amazing because every time you do something lazy or do something incomplete or take the short path or make a mistake of any kind, it costs you money. It costs you money invariably. No one's like, well, I did some really dumb shit and I won a ton of money. Like, that's not what happens. It's beautiful that way. You got to earn it. You got to earn it. So just know too, final thought on this, and this has been definite A-Train University level length, because I'm definitely not editing as much as this as I probably should. Sorry. If you watch it on the fast speed, it'll be fine. He says at the end of the video. There is help available. So I just want to let you know, there's a lot of help available. First, watch my other videos. Right? Because there's so many aspects that I've touched on in this video that are already covered there. Go watch that stuff. Don't reach out to me with an email and be like, hey, can you tell me about this thing? And be like, here's the link to the video over there. Please just watch that video and then come ask me follow-up questions, and I'll be enjoying that conversation, right? So, but you want to ask some questions. The best place to do that, any questions to me or other members of our community, join our free community at atraindiscord.com. Again, there should be a link in the video notes here for this. And then you can join us over there. It doesn't cost anything. Great place to ask questions. I or others will address them, because everybody starts not knowing anything, right? Everybody starts not knowing anything. Literally nothing. You come out of the womb, you're like, hey, what's up? I don't even know how to say, hey, what's up? Because I don't know words yet. Right? That is where we start with sports betting. So wherever you are, I've tried to create a ton of content that can help you in that journey, but no one's going to hand that to you, right? You have to answer these questions for yourself. You have to find that path for you. Okay. Finally, don't forget about the book, man. Like, there's so much good knowledge in that book. People need to understand these things. And I go into a lot of detail about these, and it's applicable not just in sports. There's not a single mention of sports gambling, sports betting in that book at all. But it's all applicable to it. It's all applicable. I used to give all of our annual members copies of the book until I ran out of the copies of the book. So, but you definitely get it online, and I'm happy to, if you come out to Bet Bash or wherever, happy to sign a copy or what have you too. But that is something that if you haven't read that is a treasure trove of a lot of the different steps you're going to need to take. I do talk about specific technologies there. I talk about different things that are happening. And, again, that book just came out last year, so it's very relevant still. So with that, we covered a lot of ground today. Hopefully this is useful for you. Please like and subscribe. Please let people know about it. Please check out the station. A lot of changes happening at the station, so keep checking back with it. And just, enjoy and embrace this amazing journey. I think sports gambling, it can be the best hobby in the world for a lot of us. You got to approach it thoughtfully. You've got to approach it like a business. You've got to approach it with all of this understanding. But when you start to do that, it really changes sports betting. You don't bet sports to get a fix. You bet sports to make investments. And that's really the approach you should have. Yes, there's a lot of risk. Yes, you should definitely gamble responsibly. Yes, all that. But again, this process, building a model, think about all the skills you're building that can be applicable in other areas as well. So enjoy that journey, continue to learn, and know that there's resources to help you. And I'm doing my best to provide as many of them as I can. So with that, thank you for joining me on this one. We'll see you on the next one. For now, this train's leaving the station. Until next time, save the units for the bros. Do your betting like the pros with A-Train Station. We'll see you soon. Thanks.